Michael, do you have a specific system that you go through to rank these teams? How do you get where you get on these numbers?
Well, part of it is numerical numbers, which makes my ratings in the month of, at least for the first 3 weeks, a little bit, you're not quite sure about them and you're a little bit uncomfortable because the numerical data hasn't really, you don't have enough sample size. Mm-hmm. But once we get into the regular season, then I do have a sample size, and I'm able to use what I see in terms of evaluating coaches, the coordinators, evaluating the quarterbacks by myself. I don't use QBR or any other advanced metric to do the quarterbacks. I do them myself, just like I do the coaching staffs every week. And the coaching matchups, I don't do home field advantage. I do the coaching matchups against one another, which is why I'm in tune to the Giants and the Arizona game, because to me that's more important to break down than it is to see who has home field, right? Mm-hmm. Tennessee Chargers. It's more important to watch the game last year than to give a point to Tennessee for playing at home. So I always handicap the coaching matchups. And then I have my game, what I call game codes, which are the teams that rank in the top 7 areas, the bottom 7 areas. They get a green dot, they get a red dot, and then how that matches up. So how your team matches up against somebody else. But the power rankings early are by numerical and by field. So last week, obviously, the good teams are going to be higher in the power rankings.
Well, that's interesting point, though, that also by feel, because the numbers could tell you one thing. And granted, when you get through some of those middle tier teams, it's probably a little bit more fine tuning as you go through them. But specifically, as you are doing this, that you can say, hey, my number in this spot maybe feels a little bit off to what I actually saw on the eye test, and you can adjust accordingly. Let's start going through this top 5, and we'll work our way through from 5 all the way up to 1. Who is your number 5 team in the NFL right now?
Well, I think I have Jacksonville number 5, but what I liked about Jacksonville last week is I think we don't pay enough attention to fourth quarter results. Fourth quarter offense, fourth quarter defense. It's where the game is won. And the fourth quarter for Jacksonville last week was their best quarter. They kind of messed around a little bit. They let the team come back in there, and they were able to win the fourth quarter. They scored 14 points. So I'm always looking at what it is, fourth quarter offense, fourth quarter defense. And I think that's really important. And so when you do that, you kind of understand, like, Jacksonville's able to control the ball. They were 6th in time possession in the fourth quarter last week. They did a great job. Rams, how did they win that game? They had 83% of the time of possession in the fourth quarter. Hard to get beat. It's hard to get beat when you control the ball in the fourth quarter, especially if you have the lead. So, like the Raiders, for example, they had the ball 50% of the time in the fourth quarter, but they controlled the game and put the game away. So I really think it's important to study the fourth quarter, and that's what I liked about Jacksonville last week. And they were able to get control of the game eventually. Everybody expects games to be blowouts. Well, they're always going to come down to the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. That final, by the way, week 1 for the Jags, 31-21. Trevor Lawrence had 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, did have a pick, but a great day for him overall in that offense behind Travis Etienne and Calvin Ridley. First time we've got to see him back on the football field and was dynamic with an over 100-yard day. Now, interesting you have them 5 because they are going head-to-head with your number 4 team this week in a 3-point spread game. The Kansas City Chiefs coming in at 3. They're a 3-point favorite, like I mentioned here in Jacksonville, total 51. But what put them 4 for you?
Well, I mean, when I put this together, I knew Chris Jones was going to be back. How much can he affect the game? I think he will a lot, especially with Brandon Sheriff, if he doesn't play the right guard for Jacksonville. And I haven't heard Peterson say one way or the other. He kind of made it sound like it wasn't going to happen. But, that's going to be a hard injury for Jacksonville, which I think is limited inside, too, as well, to overcome in the game. So it's something to really keep our eye on. Because if he's playing and he's in shape, which I think he is, I think that's really going to make a difference. Because between him lining up on Ben Barch or on Sheriff, he's going to win those matchups. So now why I have them 4th, last week they were 1, but I'm anxious to see without Kelsey, they're beatable. They still have Mahomes, but without Kelsey, they don't have an explosive offense. When you watch their tape, Everybody keeps waiting for Hilaire to come around. And when you study him, he doesn't see anything. He runs into the back of linemen more than any running back I've ever seen. They need more Pacheco out of that. So, and then who's going to take a step up? Is Tony going to be healthy for the whole game? Can he make plays? What about Watson? There's a lot of questions about the Chiefs. And I think, to me, I still like them because I don't want to ding them for how poorly they played. They did hold a very good Detroit team to 14 points. So I just rank them fourth. I think they're to be determined, really.
And they still have Patrick Mahomes out there on the field and a head coach in Andy Reid. So it's certainly hard to doubt them for a prolonged period of time. Okay, so Jacksonville, Kansas City, for all the talk in the AFC, your top three teams all come from the NFC. The Philadelphia Eagles checking in at 3.
Yeah, I mean, look, Philly wasn't dominant on defense. I think if Mac Jones was honest with himself, there's a lot of throws he missed on that tape. Had guys open, he missed them. The first interception, I'm not sure what he was trying to accomplish there for the pick 6. But there were throws. He made some good throws. The touchdown passes to Bourne were great. But the Eagles secondary, I mean, if you watch the tape, Boutte, the receiver for New England, ran past Bradbury. I mean, he gave him some trouble. In fact, if he gets his second foot down on the sideline, that game, they might win it. That's on the Patriots. They didn't make the plays. I'm worried about Philly's defense because the Patriots, for all the conversation the mainstream media is talking about how great they played, you never heard the word Hassan Riddick the whole day. You never heard the name Josh Sweat the whole day. Cox made some plays in there, and so did Jalen Carter. But that New England team was really good up front against them. I would say really good. They were good enough. And Philly's going to have to get better on defense. And now they have Blankenship hurt. And I think Dean goes out. They signed Rashard Evans, the kid who was in Atlanta last year, played all the games in Atlanta. Wanted $4 million, didn't get it. Now he's on the practice squad for Philadelphia. Was at one-time starter in Tennessee. They're going to need to bring him up. Now, it's a short week to bring him up. Can he make the calls? No, he doesn't even know the defense. Philly's vulnerable. The other thing that was vulnerable about Philly in the game, and I think Philly's still a good team, they're off, and this could be because they haven't played a lot this summer. Their offensive line wasn't as sharp as they typically are.
We're going to see the Eagles first up in Week 2 Thursday Night Football tomorrow as a 6.5, 7-point favorite hosting the Vikings. We can throw the top 2 teams up on Michael Lombardi's list because, Michael, you have number 1, the Dallas Cowboys, and number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. What was your deciding factor of who was 1, who was 2, both teams with dominant opening week wins?
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And both teams, it's a little bit like, are we sure they are? I think San Francisco played a better team. But Pittsburgh didn't look like the better team that day, right? I would have said San Francisco, Dallas. But Dallas was dominant from the beginning of the game, and so was San Francisco. One thing I like about San Francisco is they went back into a very tough environment and played well. Dallas has gone into New York. They've been dominating this series for a long time. Right. Pittsburgh's not an easy team to open up with. And San Francisco, which had struggled in opening games. I mean, we saw them lose in Chicago last year. We saw them almost give away a big lead in Detroit the year before. They played really well. Kyle had that team ready. And you could see the confidence the team has. I don't want to, without having to constantly talk about Trey Lance as an organization, I think there's a big cloud lifted off San Francisco. And they played with reckless abandon. Both teams, to me, you could flip them if you want. I think those are my top 5 this week.
I think, but again, I know I'm biased. I probably would have put San Francisco ahead simply for a lot of the reasons you just referenced, going into what's a tough, hostile environment against a Pittsburgh team that people actually did think was going to perform pretty well in that spot, and they just got dominated throughout. And in the Dallas Giants game, I felt like for as good as Dallas was, and they were really, really good, showed like a statement win for sure. They have largely dominated that series, which is to be expected, as you referenced. And also just the Giants shooting themselves in the foot time and time again early in that game that really put things away, and they were just behind the 8 ball and never really had an opportunity to get back into it. Yep. The 49ers, by the way, are also the favorite in the Super Bowl odds right now, supplanting the Kansas City Chiefs, plus 650 for them. Chiefs and Eagles at 7-1, and the Dallas Cowboys 9-1.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.